we'll begin our little tour of Kennedy Space Center. There's history everywhere, but it's not just space related. So let's go back in time to the 16th century. So let's go ahead and start, Ms. Brand, with the first slide, actually the second slide, I'm sorry. So, brief history of the Cape Canaveral area. Believe it or not, one of the early visitors to this area of Cape Canaveral was none other than Ponce de Leon. However, he was sort of ran out of town by the local Ai tribe, and spelled A-I-S. It's a tribe that basically was on the eastern side of the peninsula from Stuart, Florida, which is a little bit north of West Palm Beach, all the way up through the Cape Canaveral area. But, which brings me to my next topic. What does the word Canaveral mean? What does it signify? And that was one of the things that I often wondered, like, where does it come from? Well, nobody knows when it was actually first coined, the term Canaveral. However, what it does mean is place of canes. And what they're referring to are the sugarcane-like weeds, grasses that grow in this area. So that's where the term comes from, place of cane. And the only way to access the Cape was by boat until 1923, when the first bridge was built. So imagine being isolated from the mainland up until the 1920s. And that was also typical of the islands that were against the Indian River along the eastern side of the peninsula. So in the World War II, there was a naval air station called Banana River, and it was set up to train guys to patrol the waters, looking out for enemy submarines. But before we knew it, World War II came to an end, and we were already in the Cold War. And we were already making the preparations for the space race. And there were many teams assembled to basically conquer this or explore this new frontier. And during early Senate hearings, then Senator Lyndon Johnson made the statement to Dr. Wernher von Braun that coming second in space means you're coming second to everything. And Dr. von Braun smiled at LBJ and said, "Yes, Senator, space is bigger than Texas." The location of Central Florida was chosen for multiple reasons. Namely, it was against the Atlantic Ocean. Also, it was isolated. There was not that huge population that we have now in Central Florida. This was before the theme parks. This was before Disney. This was before all the commerce and business. Central Florida was very, very sparsely populated at the time of the 1940s and 1950s when all this activity began. So they needed a very sparsely populated area when choosing a site for their testing of rockets. And again, like I mentioned, it being against the Atlantic Ocean, if there were accidents, if the launch didn't go well, then the rocket would come down to the Atlantic Ocean as opposed to going into the, affecting anybody, their property, their homes, people. So that's why Central Florida was chosen. But one very, very interesting thing of note that I found out in my research was that there was a book written in 1866, I believe, by Jules Verne. And this will also hit home because I'm doing this virtual tour to a library. Jules Verne actually, in his book From Earth to the Moon, had the rocket going to the moon launching from Central Florida. He did his homework. He knew that The other reason that we needed to launch from Florida, the very, very important reason, was that we needed to take advantage of Earth's rotation to achieve that orbital velocity. If you were to launch from a higher latitude, like close to New York or the North Pole, you wouldn't be able to take as much of a payload and you wouldn't have that boost to get you into orbit. So another reason why we chose Central Florida as our site. So one of the things that we had to contend with, that the staff on the early launches had to contend with, were mosquitoes. That was a huge problem when working in those summer days before the very first launch of the Bumper 8. And it was in July of 1950. And I mentioned mosquitoes is that things were so bad with the mosquitoes because it was so close to the ocean that all the repellent that the staff would use would basically wipe out the photo ID on their badges. It would degrade. So that was one of many things that they had to contend with in that environment. But like I said, the first launch where it all started was Bumper 8. And this is very close to the location that I have on the slide here. This location that's in the photo actually was of a launch, that a very important launch that happened 11 years after Bumper 8. And that was none other than Alan Shepard's launch. So it was a very important time, and it was obviously a successful launch, but I want you to see basically the location where it pretty much started, where things were basically kicked off. So let's go ahead and one more fun fact is that when Kennedy Space Center opened up in 1965, already attendance was high, but it had a huge boost when Walt Disney World opened in 1971, because there was a package deal, a hotel package deal that Disney had to visiting guests for their hotels, that they could rent a car for free. So one of the things that early guests at Disney World would do at that time was that they would take the drive over to Kennedy Space Center, because this was during the peak of the Apollo program and all that excitement that accompanied that. So I thought that was a very, very interesting tidbit to share. And I'm hoping that at some point very soon I can actually see those early sites myself. I'm very much looking forward to it because of all the history that happened there. So anyways, on to the HQ building. Thank you very much, Ms. Brand. So reporting to HQ. So the Central Campus headquarters was, it's not the building that you see currently. This is the new current headquarters, but before that, there was another headquarters building not too far from there. It was actually a little bit more to the west. But what's interesting is that the signage on the HQ, the old HQ building, was transferred to this new HQ building. But it's brand new, this building. It's 2019 was when it was built, and very, very high tech occupancy sensors, gearless traction elevators. And also, not only is it high tech, but it is extremely environmentally friendly. It's platinum certified in leadership and energy, the LEED certification. There are Florida native plants that surround the building. And 98% of the construction waste was recycled, which is amazing. So one of the many reasons why this building is so cool, and I did get to go in there a couple times. Well, one reason that it was very cool for personal reasons is that this building is where I took my oath of office in December of 2020. And it was when I came to the campus to collect my equipment and take my oath of office, it was during the peak of the lockdown. So there were maybe 2 or 3 people, it felt like, in this building. There was no activity. I went to the cafeteria, which is in the rear of the building, and it's very spacious, a lot of natural light, but that's where I took my oath. And I pretty much sat there in that cafeteria and pretty much had the cafeteria to myself. But it was very good memories and gave me goosebumps, taking that oath. It was a very proud moment for me. But anyway, one of the many reasons why it's also so cool is that each floor has a color scheme and an accented color scheme that corresponds to each planet in the solar system. So Mercury is floor 1, Venus is floor 2, and so on and so forth. So the 7th floor, where the executives are, where the senior leadership is, that is actually the Neptune floor. And obviously, yes, there are 8 planets in the solar system, and yet there's 7 floors from Mercury to Neptune. The break rooms are done in earth tones, and so that's where the homage to Earth comes in. But I thought that was very, very interesting. There are constellations embedded also in the lobby floor with cloud effects in the cafeteria ceiling. So very, very fascinating building, and not too far from the campus HQ building, a little bit further east is another building where the ramp that we've all seen in historical footage in the news of the astronauts coming down that ramp as they're getting into the vehicle to go to the launch pad. That ramp is not too far from the building. So also I had a lot of goosebumps seeing that ramp up close and personal for the first time. So, and there are patches from each astronaut's mission that surround the door on that ramp. So very, very cool. So also the gym that's used by the KSC employees is also in that building. So I'm hoping one of the many things I can do once it's time to go back and report on campus is use that gym. So I'm very much into running, but anyway, I digress. So let's do the next slide and move on to our next location. So as you can see, we have the VAB, which is one of the big landmarks, and I do mean big, in Kennedy Space Center. And people call it the VAB, but to me, it should be the VBB, the very big building. And this building goes back to the 1960s. And at the time in Cape Canaveral, when we had our launches, we started off towards the bottom of the Cape with launch pad 1, 2, 3. Pad 5 was used for Alan Shepard's launch. And we had pad 14 for John Glenn's launch. And going up and up and up, and they were built in that numerical order, but then we went from the Mercury program to the Gemini program. And lo and behold, we were at the Apollo program, and we needed a bigger rocket in order to enable us to get to the moon. So what we needed to assemble all those parts was a huge building and assemble things vertically to make it a lot easier and more efficient. So we needed a mobile launch platform as well to assemble the rockets, which would be the Saturn V, the amazing, enormous Saturn V. And we also needed a vehicle to convey the crafts from the vehicle assembly building that you see here over to the launch platforms. And the vehicles that were designed and created were the crawlers. And I'll talk more about that in a minute, but going back to the VAB itself, it was completed in 1966. And over its usage, it has processed 14 Saturn V rockets. And through its time, 135 shuttle missions were also processed in this building. And most recently, as you probably have seen in the news, the SLS, which will be Artemis 1, has been also processed in this building. And just want to run a few numbers by you, staggering numbers at that. There are 1 million steel bolts in this construction, 65,000 cubic yards, 98,590 tons of steel. The building encompasses about 8 acres. There are 500 gallons of paint just to redo the American flag on there. The building itself is 525 feet tall and 518 feet wide. Just imagine the enormity of this building. And I'll keep going. These doors that you see just a little bit next to the NASA meatball logo are the largest doors in the world, and they themselves are 456 feet high. And it takes 45 minutes for those doors to open and close. It just boggles the mind. Not only that, the largest American flag is what you see right there on that building. And it's just to put some things into perspective, it's 209 feet high, 110 feet wide. The blue field in the American flag that you see is about the size of an NBA court. So imagine an NBA court right there in place of that blue field. And each star on that blue field is 6 feet across. So the average height of a person basically is the width of that star, and the stripes on that American flag are 9 feet wide. So just simply staggering. And it would take, when it comes to volume of the VAB, it would take 250 billion ping pong balls to fill this building up. And that's, to put it another way, that's 791 times the size of our country's population. By volume, and I'm sure you guys up in New York will love this statistic here, by sheer volume alone, 3.5 Empire State Buildings can fit inside this structure. The crane inside that's used for the rockets can alone lift the equivalent of 47 African elephants. And it's been known there's a bit of weather inside, actually, because the enormity of the building. On a personal note, when I've gone there to actually see the SLS assembled about 4 months ago, I wasn't even the complete way up the building. I was maybe halfway up in terms of, I think it was on the 8th floor of the building. And looking down, seeing people down below on the ground floor, they really did look like ants. So, and I don't have vertigo, but it was dizzying just looking up from that height. So just a word about the crawlers. We have 2 crawlers that have been used since the beginning. And when they are fully loaded, it approaches, the crawler can approach a top speed of a whopping 1 mile an hour. So when it is not loaded, the speed of one of those guys, it doubles at 2 miles an hour. So it is pretty fast. But that is the VAB at a glance. And also when seeing that building, it was just, I stood there maybe 5 minutes just staring up. So I don't think I had that feeling since the first time I was at the Sistine Chapel, just staring up and admiring that. So it's truly an amazing, amazing building. So that leads me to our next location. We have from big to small, this little tiny beach house is the remnant of a development that existed at the time when Kennedy Space Center was being developed. The development's name was called Neptune Beach, and it consisted of several homes, a store, and a gas station. And it was bought by Uncle Sam at a cost of $31,500. And imagine buying a house, let alone land for that price. So what you see here, this beach house, is what remains of that Neptune Beach development. And what it was used for at the time of the Mercury and Gemini and Apollo mission is that it was a retreat for the astronauts. It was the time for them to step aside, basically mentally prepare for the oncoming launch. And also it was a space for them to say farewell to their families. So it is, it has a big emotional connection for people. And also imagine some of the most peaceful places on Earth. And most people would say that the beach is up there. So to get ready for a mission of extreme importance, it is only fitting that you have a little bit of time away, set aside from the world in front of the beach. Basically collect your thoughts, just basically get ready for this massive mission that you're about to undergo. John Glenn, when he was using the beach house, had fond memories of running along the beach, the seashore of Cape Canaveral. He really, really enjoyed doing that because when he would run, it was just very, very good for your legs. And I'm not sure if anybody in the audience has actually tried running on a beach before, but I knew beforehand that John Glenn used to train along the seashore of Cape Canaveral. And I remember when I lived down in South Florida, running along the beach, and it really stretches the muscles. I'll leave it at that. But so we've gone from the beach house as a private retreat place for the astronauts and their families. We've gone now to the present use of the beach house, and it is now used as a meeting place for dignitaries, a meeting place for KSC employees, and it's basically a gathering place. This is one of the spots on KSC property that I have never been to before, but I've heard so much about it. All good things, of course. And I hope really, really soon that I can see it someday. I actually am looking forward to that. I'm sure at some point I will for one meeting or another, but I enjoy very much taking in the atmosphere of the beach and basically the history and walking where the astronauts walked and their families. So that brings me to my next location. Yes, Launch Complex 39A and 39B. So like I said earlier, originally on the Cape side, we had all kinds of launch pads basically dotting that landscape that were built by the Air Force and by NASA. The last launch to launch from the Cape side was Saturn 1B. So because we needed obviously larger facilities to assemble the rockets, we also needed a larger launch pad to accommodate the Saturn V and the Apollo missions. So along with the VAB, these launch pads were constructed. So the first launch was Apollo 8 in 1968, December 1968. And it looked a little bit different from what you see in the photo here, but it had a red sort of gantry. I know we've all seen the historical footage of the Saturn V rockets heading off into their launch, and there's a red gantry instead of the gantry that a lot of us came to know growing up, like myself, like the Space Shuttle gantry. But so for the most part, the Apollo missions and the space shuttles were used with Launch Complex 39A. but 39B was also used as backup. Apollo 10 was its first mission that was accommodating that. But Launch Pad 39B is our stepping stone in the future, and is going to be used in the Artemis launches. Right now, the SLS is basically standing there at Launch Complex 39B, and it will be used for those missions as well as future Mars missions. Launch Complex 39A was leased to SpaceX in 2013. I believe it was a 20-year lease. So it's good to think, recently I went to 39B to view the SLS standing there at the launch pad. And it was an amazing, amazing sight. We took photos and stuff like that. And it was cool just thinking that one launch pad was basically used for getting us to the moon in the past. And now looking at 39B, this is the launch pad that's going to carry us to the moon for the future. And just running off a few numbers here, the flame trench at Launch Complex 39B can withstand temperatures of about 3,000 to 5,600 degrees Fahrenheit, which is incredible. And the water tower at Launch Complex 39B can hold enough to fill 27 pools. The catacomb roof on 39A, I believe, is used to, it's very, very strong, and it can support 25.5 million pounds, that's about the equivalent of 2,125 African elephants. So again, just totally, totally amazing facts. And a couple other items to note. I was wondering originally where the gantry, the red gantry that was used for the Apollo missions launch towers for Launch Complex 39A, what happened to the components of it? The part of it, the gantry that was used for the astronauts to walk from the lift over into the Saturn V, that walkway still exists, and it's over at the Kennedy Space Center Visitors Center. And not only that, but visitors, it's over at the Rocket Garden, visitors can literally follow in the footsteps of those astronauts, most specifically the Apollo 11 astronauts. You will be if you're walking down that gantry, you will be following literally in their footsteps. But it also makes me think, makes me pause and think, and that when you look at Neil Armstrong, this is exactly where he stepped, where he took his final step on Earth before heading into the Columbia module, because the next step he took after stepping off of that gantry into the craft was the giant leap for mankind that he took on the moon. And as I'm saying that right now, I'm getting goosebumps. So I highly encourage you that whenever you do get over to the Visitor Center, check out the Rocket Garden, because that gantry is there and is available for people, for visitors to walk across and basically, have that little sample of history. Another really, really interesting item, it's the Saturn V exhibit, which is also at the Kennedy Space Center Visitor Center. That there's a piece of moon rock there. And not only can you see an actual Saturn V that is fully assembled, and you can just see it in real life, up close and personal, but there's a moon rock that you can actually touch. And when I touched it, I thought it was going to be rough and kind of rocky and things like that, but it's very, very smooth. So that's another thing to take in should you go to the visitor center down here in Cape Canaveral. Those are two amazing things where you can basically feel and take part in that history. So we will move on to our next location, the neighbors. Ah, yes. So it being on a wildlife preserve, just a few notes, more numbers for you guys. There are 15 varieties of endangered wildlife at Kennedy Space Center. There, more specifically, there are 5 bald eagle nests around the center, most especially the Kennedy Parkway. Um, and there are manatees, there are bobcats, there are gators, and the total land is 140,000 acres, but 6,800 of those acres are used for NASA-related activities. So do the math, that's quite a bit for the neighbors. The remaining land is federally protected in an effort to safeguard the wildlife that is currently living there. The preserve is home to 150 species of fish, 69 species of reptiles and amphibians, 267 species of bird, and 30 species of mammals. And within these species, we have 27 state and federally protected species that also live on the preserve. We work harmoniously with the wildlife there during our missions and operations. And we have been reminded many times, I've gotten many emails, we've all had many emails, that we work on a preserve and we need to safely share the space with the neighbors and basically have that mutual respect. More specifically, also, at the end of the day, we are strongly encouraged to look under our vehicles and look out for said neighbors that might be hanging out underneath. So situational awareness is the name of the game when we approach the neighbors. One story also that comes to mind is that one of my coworkers was coming into work into the SSPF. That's one of the buildings adjacent to a little bit further east from the central campus headquarters. She was heading in one morning into the SSPF, and she noticed a bunch of people on the second and third floors like waving hi to her. And what it looked like was waving hi to her, but it turned, and she thought that, but it turns out they were telling her that she was about to walk right into the area where a snake was. So I would have totally freaked out if that was me. But one of my coworkers also showed me a video that she took recently of an alligator walking across one of the roads. So again, situational awareness is the name of the game. So just a word of mention about the neighbors, and moving on to our next location. Ah, yes. What you'll see here is the Shuttle landing facility. It was began use in 1979, and it has accommodated 78 shuttle landings. The other shuttle landings you might have also seen in the news. They were over at Edwards Air Force Base over on the other side of the country in California. But the shuttle landings that have happened here, this is the 4th longest runway in the country and one of the longest runways in the world. And it has accommodated all kinds of things, not just shuttle landings. There has been NASCAR testing. There has been a couple of speed records that have been broken on this runway. Also, as you can see in the picture, it has even hosted our commander-in-chief, which is really, really neat. It's a big thing when Air Force One appears at any airport. So to have it at our shuttle landing facility is truly, truly an amazing thing. As far as future use, the intended use among many things would be horizontal launch and landing, suborbital flight training and research, and also weightless flights. So I hope someday, somehow, I can take part in one of those at some point. I think that would be really, really exciting to experience. And there's also potential for development around that site with multiple hangars, with offices and shops. So that is the shuttle landing facility at a glance. So moving on to our next slide, basically bringing it home. So looking at the future. So our idea is basically creating a multi-user spaceport here at Kennedy Space Center. We're moving from a monolithic NASA program field installation to a multi-user spaceport on this federal property. The evolution of this land to a multi-user spaceport is not necessarily timeline dependent, but it's rather based on an increase in the number of users and operators in line with space market demand. And so as you can see, the various companies that are engaged in this land, we have Boeing, we have Space Florida, who recently entered into an agreement with NASA to use the shuttle landing facility. We have SpaceX, we have Lockheed Martin, we have Blue Origin, to name a few. And we've really, really come a long way in the 60 years that Kennedy Space Center has been around. It truly is remarkable. We've gone from space pioneers to space tourism now. We've seen recently in September 2021, the private crew, the all-private crew that launched on a SpaceX Falcon 9. It's just incredible to see that that originally we were space explorers, and now we're opening it up basically, and we're divesting without diminishing. Basically divesting assets without eliminating the capability to serve both critical government missions and programs, but while encouraging the growth of the commercial space transportation market needs. It's basically coexisting is the name of this game, and the future looks very, very exciting from here, and it's amazing that we're all part of this, and we're all here, we're experiencing it in lifetime. That not only we're seeing the beginning of the space tourism industry, but also we're at the edge of seeing the beginning of the lunar missions, our return to the moon. And American, we need that boost. After all we've been through, in the past couple of years to be working on these missions of returning us to the moon. It's really, really a wonderful thing. So this is only the beginning, folks. And this is basically KSC in a nutshell. This is a place where goals have been met, where history has been made, and where dreams have been fulfilled, like mine as well. I've spoken of fulfilling a dream of mine of working for the agency, but most especially, most recently, there's another dream that I've been able to fulfill, and that's of a tour guide. When I was a child, I actually wanted to serve as a tour guide. So thank you to you for arranging this presentation, Ms. Brandt. But what I am going to do, let's move on to the next slide. If we have following NASA at Kennedy. So there's all kinds of amazing news that are coming out of Kennedy Space Center all the time, as we're bringing humanity closer to understanding the wonders of the universe that are out there. So I will actually take this time and do a little quiz for everybody. So you can open up your microphones, anybody who's comfortable at answering or answering at the chat. So I will give you guys a little quiz. Some of the best tours I've been on in the past have concluded with little quizzes. So I will open it up with the first question. Let me see if I can see the chat. All right, here we go. What conquistador landed near the Cape at the early 16th century?
Ponce de Leon.
Very good, very, very good. Awesome. All right. What does the word canaveral mean?
Sugarcane?
Close, close, very, very place of sugarcane. But I'll give you credit on that one. Excellent. All right, next question. Who said, yes, space is bigger than Texas?
The scientists.
Werner von Braun.
All right, awesome. Very, very good. All right, you guys are good. You guys are good. All right, I'm going to step it up a little bit. How many floors are in the campus HQ building?
8.
Close, close.
7.
7. Yes, there are floors ranging from Mercury on the first floor up to Neptune on the 7th floor. And that's where the senior leadership resides. But you guys are really doing well here. All right. How many steel bolts were used in the construction of the VAB? Anybody? Going once, going twice. Oh, good, very good. Hope you guys didn't Google that, but excellent, excellent. All right. How many Saturn V rockets have been processed at the VAB? Somebody wrote 1 billion. No, not 2, not 2. Close, 17, close, close, very close. No, not 6, 19, you guys are getting close. One last guess. Okay, well, I got several guesses all at once. 14, 14 is the answer. All right, how many space shuttle missions have been prepped here? Anybody? It's a tough one. 135 space shuttle missions. All right. Who admired running on the beach before his big mission? Which astronaut liked running along the beach side when he was staying at the beach house? Glenn, awesome. Awesome, good job. And how much was the property bought for by the government in 1963? Does anybody remember how much?
Was it 35,000?
Very close, 31,500, very close. I mean, dirt cheap. I mean, like I said, if I could buy a house for that much, man, I struck gold. And what was the name of the development that was where the beach house was? Neptune Beach. Very, very good. Awesome. You guys are incredible at this. All right. What was the first launch from 39A? Yes, round of applause. You guys are really, really good. What was the first launch from Launch Complex 39A? Apollo 8, yes. And yep, Apollo 8. And that was the mission that actually took the astronauts around the moon. They didn't land on the moon, but if it wasn't for Apollo 8, there wouldn't be an Apollo 11 and all the other Apollos that came after that. So Apollo 8 was huge, and I think a very, very appropriate first use of that launch complex was, in fact, Apollo 8. So let's ask another one here. What was the first launch from Launch Complex 39B? Yeah, Apollo 10. Very good. Very, very good. This is a bonus question. I didn't mention this before, but what year was the final launch of the space shuttle? And that was from, that was also from there. Anybody? No. Well, that was I think that was the final Apollo launch, 1972. 2011, I believe. So, but you guys are really, really good. And I'll ask, let's see, I'll ask one last question here. How many shuttle landings have been in the shuttle landing facility? How many shuttle landings have been accommodated by the shuttle landing facility? There have been 135 missions, but how many landings? No, not 115. Getting warmer. No, no. I gotta go further down, further down. Ooh, close, 88. Very, very close, very close. 86, getting warmer. 83, ooh, boiling hot, boiling hot. Oh man, really, really cooking. 82, not yet. 81, oh my gosh, yeah, we're counting down now. We're having our own little lunch countdown right here. We might as well just keep going down. Very, very close. No, 77. Oh, getting cold, getting cold. 78. Very good, very good. 78. Yes, big trophy for all you guys. So that pretty much wraps up my presentation, and it's been a huge honor to speak to you guys. I hope someday that very, very soon you will be able to come down and visit the KSE Visitor Center. And I will be looking for Miss Brand. Can you send me the questions that everybody has, and I'll be able to answer them in a timely basis and to the best of my ability. But I hope everyone has enjoyed the presentation, and I look forward to answering all your questions. And yeah, I hope you all came away from this learning something.
Thank you so much. I know it was very interesting for me.
Yep.
Anyone who submitted questions in the chat box, once I get those answers, I'll email them out to you, as long as you've registered with an email address. And if not, you can share it in the inbox here in the chat, or you can email us at communityengagement@pmlib.org. So thank you so much again, and thank you everyone for attending, and stay safe.
Thank you.
Stay safe, everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
No problem. I had a wonderful time.